All right, welcome in. This is Sunday Night Roundtable presented by Broadway Sports. Head over to BroadwaySportsMedia.com, partnered with 440 Sports. I am Justin Graver. I am hosting tonight. Mr. Lebowski has no electricity, so our condolences to him. We're welcoming in Taylor Gamble at Taylor R. Gamble on Twitter, at Rob Greenlaw, at Rob on Broadway on Twitter. How you guys holding up over there? Rob, how you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. Lebowski's a little lucky that his power went out because he couldn't see all of it in all of its glory. He had to watch it on his phone, and now he doesn't have to do a post game.
That is true. Taylor, how are you doing tonight?
Um, well, I'm disappointed in the way our defense played, but I have confidence in next week, but it kind of lowers my confidence for the Titans in the playoffs.
Yes, we will talk about all that. So Titans failed to take care of business completely against the Packers, falling 40-14. Just an all-around horrible game, pretty much from every phase, right from the get-go. It didn't look like the Titans were prepared to play in the snow. Looked like Green Bay was like, you know what? We're Green Bay. We play in the cold weather all the time, and we know how to deal with it. And the Titans had success in cold weather late last year, had success in cold weather a while back in 2016 when they beat Kansas City on the road, but this was nothing like either of those games. It was snowing heavily at kickoff. You thought maybe Derrick Henry would be having an advantage in that environment, but it did not prove true on that first Packers drive. Right down the field, didn't even look like the snow affected them at all. And Devonta Adams scores the first touchdown for, I don't know how many times this season Devonta Adams has scored the first touchdown in a Packers game, but a lot. So, I don't know. Rob, what did you think just watching this game as it unfolded?
I mean, it didn't feel like it, I guess, at first, but in retrospect, punting on the first drive in Packers territory kind of set the tone for the rest of the game. That it was definitely a go for it situation. It shouldn't have been a punt there. They should have gone for it. So they gave up on the game. It felt like right then and there, and then the rest of it kind of followed suit. I mean, they made it close in the second half. They cut the lead to 5 points, and then from there, it. I mean, the rest was history. And I know people are going to be in the chat and they're going to complain about the refs and whatnot. But the refs made some really bad mistakes. The offsides was terrible. The out of bounds was terrible. And I'm pretty sure the punt hit the Packers player. I'm almost 100% positive the punt hit the Packers player, and there was no review on that either. All those things being said, the Titans didn't deserve to get they didn't make the most of any opportunity. They let the Packers move the ball at will. It was just a really sad effort overall.
Yeah, to me, the blocked kick would have been amazing if they took that all the way for the score. But also, let's say they get that kick at the 8-yard line with 4 minutes left in the half, and they score on the next play or something. Now Aaron Rodgers has 4 minutes to go get a touchdown before halftime. That might have actually helped the Titans.
I'm also glad that we just finally got a sack for once. And if they wouldn't have called that penalty on that blocked kick, then we wouldn't have got that sack. So
that is very true. Without that penalty, the Titans have no sacks in 4 straight games. So
yeah.
And stepping out of bounds, let's be real. Green Bay was going to go down and score on that drive anyway.
Right.
There's just the defense. I mean, this is the worst possible matchup for the Titans. And the reason I say that is Kansas City is obviously a terrible matchup for every team. And this is something Superhorn said in our chat during the game. But the fact that Green Bay can run the ball so well and then use those run looks to confuse the linebackers and create space down the field is just such an awful, awful combination for this team. And A.J. Dillon was a beast tonight. 21 carries, 124 yards, 2 touchdowns. This guy was running at Boston College last year, so he's good for playing in the cold weather, and he really looked like, he looked like how I thought Henry could look tonight, just dominating running through tacklers.
Yeah, and the thing was the Titans didn't look interested in tackling anybody, really. They didn't look interested in tackling receivers or A.J. Dillon, so it didn't really matter who was moving the ball for the Packers.
Yeah, and the pass protection was also really weak on the offensive side. That's a good comment there. David Quisenberry playing at left tackle. I just don't know if he's really a starting he's obviously not a starting caliber player, right? And he did okay when he first came in, but he has struggled the last couple of weeks. Wouldn't you say, Taylor?
I agree.
So let's look ahead. I mean, we could talk about this game all night long about how the Titans just. I agree with this. I mean, 59-0 last time in that major snow game with the Patriots. This comment here, I never want the Titans to play in the snow again. How can you disagree with that? But also, the Titans defense has no heart. I mean, I don't know about that. They were piling up. I mean, it's not that they weren't trying. They just suck.
But the thing is, like, yeah, he says the Titans defense has no heart, and it's hard to argue that because every single team moves the ball at will on this defense. You mentioned earlier that, the linebackers get put into conflict with these run looks that look the same as the pass looks. And that's the worst possible situation for the worst inside linebackers in the league. I mean, I can't even think of another duo that's worse. David Long had some good plays, but Rashaan Evans is actively horrendous.
I would guess David Long led the team in tackles. I'm going to look that up. He did.
I don't think it's that like our defense has no heart. I think it's just that they just have no coordination. It just looks like they're just like thrown everywhere at all times and no one knows who they're covering because there's just guys consistently being left wide open play after play.
There's a little bit of that, but you also have Desmond King getting spun around like 3 or 4 times on the first drive. I mean, just simple things. These guys have played football before, and I'm sure they've played in the snow at some point, and it seemed like it was all completely foreign to them.
And Adoree Jackson got juked out all night by Devonta Adams. It was horrible.
Anyone they tried to put on Adams, didn't matter if they put 2 guys on Adams. I mean, Adams juked Vaccaro and Butler on one play where he came back across the field, and he ran that little pivot route all night long with incredible success. The Titans were jumping everything inside and letting him get open on the outside, and then not tackling when given the opportunity outside too. So, I mean, I do think having a defensive coordinator would make a difference. Like Dean Pete, this defense was, beatable through the air last year, but they weren't the worst third down defense in history, the worst sack defense in potentially NFL history since the Super Bowl era. I mean, this team has so few sacks. At least franchise record for fewest sacks is well within the cards here if they don't get any next week against Houston. But let's talk about that. Let's move forward. Let's talk about Houston now. Let's talk about the playoffs because, yes, this team looked terrible tonight, but yes, every offense can destroy the Titans when given the opportunity, but the Titans can get up to a lead on lesser teams than the Packers. I mean, this was really a perfect storm of terrible things happening. The snow, the cold weather did not help the Titans at all. They did not look prepared for that. The start they got off to was the worst possible start. Not starting with ball, I think, hurt them. They've started with ball in the past few games and done really well with that. And letting the other team go all the way down and score a touchdown on the opening drive. And then the penalties. Rashaan Evans, man. This is something I disagree with. Comment, Evans is not as bad as it seems. D-line is so awful they can't keep the O-line off the backers. I disagree with that. I mean, Evans just stands there and waits to get blocked. We saw the difference tonight when David Long was coming downhill. I think David Long was probably the best player on defense tonight. And Rashaan Evans, it's not only the penalties, but on the run that Jones bounced to the outside for 59 yards, Evans was just literally standing in the hole. Like, he wasn't scraping outside. He wasn't getting ready to move one way or the other. He was just standing there, doing nothing. And when you just stand there, maybe thinking too much, like you said earlier, Taylor, thinking too much, I don't know, you're going to get beat every time. But Houston, do you guys think Deshaun Watson's going to play? Rob, start with you. Is Deshaun Watson going to play this game?
John McClain seems pretty set on that he's not going to play, and that would obviously be amazing news for the Titans. Even if he does, I mean, yes, he'll move the ball on the Titans defense, but that's definitely a matchup where the Titans can exploit their run defense because it's really, really bad. They let Samaje Perine run all over them, and Derrick Henry's about 1,000 times better player than Samaje Perine. So even if he does play, I'd be pretty confident in that matchup. But I'm hoping obviously that he doesn't.
Taylor, do you think Derrick Henry will break 2,000 yards? He got 98 yards tonight. He needed 321 coming into the game, which means he needs about 240 yards.
I don't think Derrick Henry is going to be getting 240 yards next week at all. I also think Deshaun Watson's not going to play. There's really no reason for him to play. If he gets an injury and gets injured into the offseason, that would be awful for the Texans because he's arguably one of their best players on the team. and like the only light of their team. So I don't see any reason for him to play, because either way, either the Colts or us is going to win the division. They're not in it at all. So there's really no reason.
Totally agree. And Laramie Tunsil has a high ankle sprain, according to Ian Rappaport. So it looks like he won't play either. And I don't know how you risk Watson's health after the injury he may or may not. I don't know if you guys saw the play today, but his hand got caught in a helmet and his arm got like bent and ripped around as he fell to the ground. Did not look good at all.
He's not going to get touched, though, by the Titans. They can put him in with whoever, and he's not going to get touched. So I think he's pretty safe from like a pass rush standpoint. It would be like a non-contact injury that I'd be afraid of with him.
So Titans playoff scenarios, everything that they needed to happen this weekend did not happen. Las Vegas did not beat Miami. Baltimore beat the Giants, which was not what they wanted to happen. The only good thing that happened was the Steelers beating the Colts, which keeps the division clinchable with a win next week. Titans can clinch the playoffs with a win next week. If Buffalo loses tomorrow night, Titans will be in the playoffs. I think that's right. Yeah, Buffalo. Is that right? Buffalo loses 2 games, one or either of their games. Pretty sure that's what Mike tweeted. Going based off Mike's tweet at Mike Miracles. Yeah, you're following him, but if you're not, make sure you're following him. But in the playoffs, it looks like the matchups right now, if the playoffs started today, actually I haven't seen this since the Titans game went final here. I'm not sure how much that affects the standings.
I think Titans Dolphins in the first round.
Yeah, so right now the Titans own the 4 seed, Dolphins own the 5th seed. Titans can beat the Dolphins in the first round if Tua is playing quarterback, right?
Yeah, Ryan Fitzpatrick would destroy this defense.
We don't want any part of the Fitz magic on this defense at all.
Definitely not. His ability to just throw it up downfield would be too much for the secondary to handle. I want to talk about Adoree Jackson because Adoree had probably his worst game as a Titan today, possibly. He gave up 2 early touchdowns to Devonta Adams, was missing tackles in the run game. He's usually a really sure tackler, but as bad as it was for this game and as bad as the Titans looked overall on defense, I think that potentially is exactly what Adoree Jackson needs before the playoffs. This is why it was good to get him back last week, for him to have 21 snaps or whatever he played so that he could play pretty much all game this week and get his ass kicked by Devonta Adams and company, because that'll help him get back into like game shape and get the rust shaken off against a really high level opponent that he'll need to be able to, if this was his first game back, or if this happened in a playoff game and that was like his first game back or whatever, that would be so that would be brutal. So I don't know. Thoughts on if Adoree Jackson gets any better as this season ends and this postseason begins?
I mean, he'd have to be better than he was tonight, right?
Yeah, I also think we have to give credit where credit is due. Devonta Adams is a fantastic athlete and receiver. He has really good footwork, and it was Adoree's first game back, so you can't be too hard on him. And also the weather conditions they were playing in, up to 25-mile-per-hour winds and all that snow, that's tough because we don't really get weather like that in Nashville very often, so they're not really used to conditions like that.
I am optimistic. This is still a good team. I mean, this team had a horrible game tonight, and they were beat in all 3 phases. Actually, I don't know if they were beat in all 3 phases. Darrington Evans is a hell of a kickoff returner, and
he is amazing. I think every single one at least made it to the 30.
He played really good
except
today.
For maybe the very last. Yeah, and he didn't really play at all on offense, but Jerry McNichols did. Okay.
Was that a pass protection thing, you think? I'm kind of confused why that happened.
He did have a couple. Darrington Evans had a couple of run plays there. Maybe not many, but he did have a few.
Looking at the box score here, I'm just curious to see. Yeah, he had 1 carry for 3 yards. A.J. Brown, 4 catches, 43 yards. Jonnu Smith, 3 catches, 30 yards, and a touchdown. Just a down day for the offense overall, but again, those weather conditions, like you said, it doesn't happen a lot in Nashville, and they were practicing in pretty cold weather all week, but not the kind of winds and not the amount of snowfall that was there at the beginning of that game. And like I said earlier, Tannehill just didn't look like he was prepared to play in the snow. So going forward, this team, go ahead.
I was going to say he looked really, really bad tonight, like very uncharacteristically bad. He was forcing throws. You almost wonder if it's like a byproduct of the defense being so bad that he feels like they have to score on every single drive, because he was in under pressure and he would force a throw, and that's when he got into trouble. That's where two of his interceptions came from, and then there was a third one dropped that came from the same sort of play, just trying to force it in somewhere. So not a great game from him either. It was kind of a perfect storm for how bad the offense was.
Right. And I do think that the reason I'm optimistic is a game like this, it is indicative of where the team's at, but it's not indicative of where they're going, because this is the type of game where you can regroup and say, look, this is a playoff caliber opponent. I mean, championship caliber opponent here. If this is what we look like against them, we're not ready to compete. And that's the kind of thing that can motivate the team and help them learn and grow and prepare for what will be a tough playoff stretch. I mean, they will not get to the Super Bowl without going through the Chiefs, in my opinion. And the Chiefs struggled today, too, to beat Atlanta, but they did come away with that win. Our boy, Rob, missed the field goal for the
0 points for Younghoe Koo in a fantasy-related note.
I'm so glad I benched him.
Derrick Henry didn't have the fantasy championship a lot of people were hoping for, but I don't know. I don't have a whole lot else to say about this team except that I think they can get a lot better. Taylor, do you have any last thoughts before we wrap this up?
Okay, I want to say I know our offense looked pretty bad today, but I think the weather had a lot to play on that. And I know our defense is bad, but when our offense is playing like it should play, it kind of overshadows how bad our defense is. And that's kind of what we need. We need our offense to perform when our defense doesn't. And I think the snow really played into that, because we didn't play any snow games or games with 25-mile-per-hour wind or cold games like this last year. And, Ryan Tannehill is used to playing in Miami where it's always warm all the time. So this is a big difference for him. He's not used to playing in cold weather and snow consistently like this all the time. So I'm really optimistic for next week, and I think our offense is going to find a way to have everything click and get everything back where it should be.
And it felt like the defense that they were facing tonight was pretty prepared for a lot of the concepts in the passing game the Titans were running. So on the learning standpoint note, I think that Arts has a lot to learn from this game too. And, the game plan didn't look super solid on offense. I agree with Cedric here saying on Facebook we have to win shootouts. Yeah, the Titans are going to have to win shootouts in the playoffs, but they are capable of doing so. Rob, do you want to wrap us up here with your final thoughts on this team?
Yeah, I think tonight was pretty gross as far as a performance, but I do agree with both of you. There's some room for optimism. I think they can beat the Dolphins. I think they can beat any non-Chief team in the playoffs. And if they, by some miracle, they do make it to the Super Bowl, Super Bowl's in Tampa Bay. That's pretty warm weather.
Right. And Green Bay looks like a great team. This could be a potential Super Bowl rematch if the Titans can somehow get there. Obviously, it would probably require beating Kansas City, but that kind of game would be, you know what? If they go out and turn them over a few times and score quickly on offense, I don't know. I'm not saying I'm hopeful, but it could happen. Anything.
I would take Vrabel in a rematch.
I would take Vrabel in the rematch too. I think LaFleur did get the best of him here, which
he did.
I would not have expected. I mean, from a game planning and team readiness standpoint, Vrabel was.
That probably pissed off Vrabel quite a bit.
Especially because they talked about all week. I think playing in the cold is a mental thing, and playing in the heat has a physical toll on your body, but playing in the cold is all mental. And Vrabel had played all those years in Pittsburgh and New England and Kansas City. Like, those are all cold weather cities.
Mm-hmm.
He's probably pissed at this team right now and himself.
Yeah, right. He should be. I hope he is.
I hope he is too, because that's the way to motivate them. But something Austin said in our chat, Titans under Vrabel, they don't lay down twice in a row. So if you get an egg-laying match like this, you can expect them to come out big next week. All right, that'll wrap us up here. Sunday Night Roundtable, brought to you by Broadway Sports Media. Be sure to check out www.broadwaysportsmedia.com. We have a current sale going on through New Year's, on New Year's Day at midnight. So when the clock strikes midnight, the sale will be over. But until then, you can enter code DHENBUR, to get 50% off a premium membership. 50% off. any monthly membership, and that will last for the entire time you have an account with us. So go check that out, BroadwaySportsMedia.com. For Rob at Rob on Broadway, for Taylor at Taylor R. Gamble, I'm Justin Graver, signing off. You guys tighten up, and we'll see you next week.